We see that there is a big change in power balance. We have Trump in the USA and most probably Fillon in France that is very skeptical towards NATO. What is the application for the security in Europe, first of all in Europe? Not only for NATO's future, but for Europe, the security in Europe in general.
Neither of these two figures, and it is possible what I say also will apply to the next government of Italy, are people who seem determined or even willing to be bound by the fundamental orthodoxies of the post-Cold War era that have defined the West policy. It was the real fundamental issue that we have been engaged in for 3 years has been the defense of the Helsinki-based order. Candidate Trump did not even show an awareness that such a thing existed. To judge by his words, the only threat that matters that's faced by the United States is IGIL, ISIS, Daesh, and secondarily China. And Europe, as he has said many times, is simply an issue for Europeans. François Fillon has a long track record that comes from a certain type of Gaullism that is very hard, that believes a foundation of European security must include the closest possible cooperation, even a measure of incorporation of Russia, and treating the United States as an external actor. These have been consistent lines of his own policy. So we have at least two significant figures coming into power, if Fillon wins the election and Marine Le Pen does not, in which case, if she does, we have to speak about a whole other range of hazards, that either appear not to recognize the established rules, or are we willing to replace these established rules without exactly telling us what they are going to replace them with. And that means, effectively, today we are living in a world without a gyroscope, where we cannot take the established rules for granted. The question is what the new rules are going to be, and to what extent the established rules will be damaged. Because I must add, we mustn't forget that whatever, despite the complete change of the whole political landscape in the United States and France, we shouldn't neglect Britain, which has voted to leave the European Union. All three countries remain functioning liberal democracies where there are different power centers, there are countervailing powers, countervailing interests, strong circles of expertise, experienced people who even Donald Trump has to depend upon. And to what extent are they going to be able to qualify, diminish the force of this kind of change and radicalism? To what extent will they make new leaders reconsider? And there are allies. What will be the influence of Angela Merkel on François Fillon?
Do you see in Germany this potential to counterbalance these trends that we see in the US and in France with new presidents and possible?
One problem we face is that now Germany is being expected to do too much. And we should not forget that Angela Merkel herself is influenced by, Germany itself is influenced by the same trends. So the alternative for Germany, this movement AfD, may enter parliament for the first time, this far right-wing movement, even though the far right is weaker in Germany for obvious reasons than it is in France. But even internally, her own position may not be as strong. And one of the challenges we face is to make sure, the rest of us must make sure, that this the struggle to maintain the rules that Ukraine certainly and many other countries believe are vital to the preservation of security in Europe, that this is not a fight that has to be assumed by Germany alone. one of the saddest consequences of Brexit is that it deprives Angela Merkel now of the country that has been its strongest ally in upholding the rules, and also in upholding a fiduciary, financially responsible view of the European economy and European integration. And the UK now can only be an ally from outside, much diminished in influence, not inside, which greatly adds to these dangers, because the whole balance in Europe risks then shifting in a different direction, in a more populist direction, and a direction that is also more sympathetic to Russia and less sympathetic to the United States.
How do you see this problem, and the scale of the problem, that Germany could be ready and able to continue the present course towards Russia, and not only towards Russia, towards NATO and so on, but it won't have enough allies in Europe, starting from 2017? Is it a problem?
Well, it is a very strong possibility, so that it will have enormous difficulty. A country that has been, since the Second World War, its closest ally over many issues, namely France. And the question is, to what extent can countries like Sweden, Poland, Finland, Baltic states really make up for this? Netherlands, which faces its own problems of this nature, as you know, the Dutch had a referendum and they vetoed they blocked ratification of the association agreement with Ukraine, and Britain now outside Europe. So this is the issue. So too much is resting on the shoulders of one country and in fact one government, Merkel's government.
Today you discussed what is after Budapest memorandum. Your answer, what is after Budapest memorandum for Ukraine? Is there something in terms of security?
The Budapest memorandum, first of all, always was given too much significance. In political terms, Russia's tearing up of the Paris Charter, its violation of the Charter of the United Nations, should matter more than its disregarding of the Budapest Memorandum. The fact that it has torn up its own interstate treaty with Ukraine of 1997 shows that it does not respect international law. So the issue has never really been the Budapest Memorandum. The issue has been the whole package of documents, understandings, undertakings, treaties concluded in the years after the Cold War ended that established the current international order, and whether or not we're willing to defend it. In view of the questions we were just discussing, the Budapest Memorandum today will have even less relevance. It doesn't mean that the support of the United States and the United Kingdom for it have become unimportant. They are important, but it means Ukraine cannot base Ukraine never could base its own security simply on treaties and agreements and other people's interpretation of them. Ukraine, more than ever, must base its security first and foremost upon itself. And the biggest problem for Ukraine in this respect is that the successes on the ground in the war in Donbass have been accomplished by ordinary people, despite the obstruction of the authorities, the defense system they work in, and the rest of it. These internal factors are the most important ones. The most important thing is that the state system of Ukraine must become effective. It must become effective and respected in the eyes of its people and in the eyes of its army. And this challenge is much more important for achieving greater international support, and it's more important than achieving international support.
Could it be like that after the Brexit, Great Britain would be even more dedicated to Euro-Atlantic partnership because it was something that it really wants to preserve, something that would like preserve the established order than even it used to be before the Brexit? What's your opinion?
There is such a sentiment, and it might work out that way, but security in Europe is not just provided by NATO. The European Union has a very powerful role in maintaining security in Europe. It's multidimensional, and the United Kingdom as a key player in the EU has strengthened this. The real value of having the UK in the EU is that it strengthens the Atlanticist understanding of security rather than the pan-European understanding of it supported by Gaullist and supported by Russia, and connects NATO and the EU in a variety of ways. NATO and the EU have become closer and closer in military and security terms. The UK will have more difficulty continuing to influence this evolution if it is outside, whatever role it plays in NATO itself.